in all the world to see, and I, for one, can appreciate the risks involved. I remember some of my own personal weather disasters. One of my first sponsors was one of Cleveland's leading men's clothiers, and I had no sooner introduced this men's clothing store than I turned to the weather map and pointed, and my suit coat split from the shoulder to the arm. We all collect these spoonerisms where you mix up letters, and who will ever forget the night that the sports show, sponsored by Johnson's J-Wax, was introduced as Jackson's John Wax. And if you think those were disasters, back in the 50s, they were really everyday events. But the fact that the programs were all live then gave them a special appeal beyond the program itself, even in children's programming. When Davy Herbert picked up his instrument to portray the popular Mr. Banjo, for example, there was always the chance his derby might fall off to reveal if he was wearing a toupee. When Ed Fisher donned his attire as Bozo the Clown, you knew that somewhere, someday, beneath that red plastic nose was a real nose waiting to sneeze. And when an interviewer came down to the kids' level on the Dale Young Show, there was always the chance he might not be able to get back up.
Yes, and this is Jim Doney with stiff knees now. Can you straighten up again?
Are you sure Toulouse-Lautrec started like this?
Come on over here. All right, now we have these chairs set up.
Back in the 1950s, television was not quite as sophisticated as it is now. But nevertheless, production managers spared no expense in set design. When a game show required special equipment, they borrowed only the finest chairs from the lunchroom.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hurry up, sit down. Well, there's another chair over there. There's one over here.
Production budgets in the 50s didn't allow for much specialization among the employees either. After finishing a live children's show, a versatile Jim Doney might sell a little antifreeze before breaking for lunch, and then return to host an afternoon movie with some very special guests. Doney had a really big shoe back then, and as a 1950s performer, there was no telling what you'd be asked to do. Howard Hoffman learned it was very helpful to even keep a pair of swim trunks in his locker.
Back in 1949, at $65 a week with Channel 9, I recognized this as somewhat of a golden opportunity in a brand new business, and whatever I was asked to do, I did, and I never thought about the money really or the amount of hours involved, because I felt that it was giving me an opportunity to be part of a growing thing. We cleaned the toilets, we hung the toilet paper, we swept the floor. Now, we did whatever was required because our first owner, Mr. Herb Mayer from Empire Coil Company, when we were Channel 9, he wanted this to be a family unit. And we were selected on that kind of a basis. What kind of an additive did you have to the family? And really, we did a little bit of everything. Whatever was required, we did.
While Howard the announcer kept his Woody loaded with Ajax and Mr. Clean, the women of WXCL and WJW were required to be quite versatile as well. Maggie Wolf often played the role of celebrity interviewer. Here she is with Jane Mansfield. That's Maggie on the left. She also occasionally had to prove her skills as a farmer, and Howard Hoffman and his cleaning crews always enjoyed seeing cows in the studio. And just as Maggie Wolf was more than a fair-haired beauty for piano player Grant Wilson, Alice Weston was more than a cook. Quite frequently on her Alice Weston show, she would play the role of staff patriot. She also became one of the first television personalities to promote women's lib. However, in emergencies, TV8 management did their share towards reversing that trend. The Alice Weston show became a household tradition for Cleveland housewives. And on TV8, there were traditions for other members of the family as well. Saturday night was date night. And before catching a movie downtown, you could decide on just which one by watching Lights, Camera, Questions. The hosts were Phil McLean, John Fitzgerald, and minus his bozo nose, Ed Fisher. They regularly reviewed films with local theater owners and producers like Joe Pasternak. Here, just back from finishing his latest hit, Please Don't Eat the Daisies.
Can I ask a question, Ed?
Please do, Dick.
Judging from the tremendous crowds that are pouring into the State Theater to see your new picture, I'm wondering whether light comedies are setting a new trend in motion picture making at this time.
Well, I hope so anyway, because our aim and our responsibility is to entertain people and not to make problems for them. And I'm, for all as you know, for the last 25 years been associated with nothing but entertainment. At least I try to. And I think the more we're going to give the public light entertainment and good comedies and make them forget their problems, the more crowds you're going to get back to their theaters. I think let's leave the problems of the world to the newspapers. That's as I always said, the cheapest message is to being sent through Western Union.
Quite a change when you think about it. I can't help but wonder how Coming Home or Apocalypse Now would have done back then. But it's refreshing to note that some things always remain the same, if not in the theaters, at least in the announcers.
You too. E. Floyd Fisher, fond farewell. Take good care of the babies.
Of all the traditions that developed at TV8 in the 1950s, there is one late-night tradition that certainly cannot be overlooked. It didn't involve a movie, it wasn't a talk show, but a simple 10-minute late-night newscast featuring Warren Guthrie, this Ohio reporter. And I remember when I was down there in Greensburg, I always watched Warren Guthrie. And to everyone in the news business, Warren Guthrie is a legend. In his 11 years on the air, he never once used a script.
You had the wire report services, the local news services, and what you simply did was copy the stuff down in the sense of lead stories. And that's all you needed. Talked it through, being yourself. And the old days are long gone now. The map behind was to represent the world. The map on the right was to do the weather on. And the weather then was a total of 30 seconds. I drew a circle, an arrow, and we said, let's go home and go to bed. On the right side, at this far right, was a globe, a plain old-fashioned globe you buy in Burroughs. And to open the show, I would spin the globe. So the camera came on, and you saw it turning around. And I said, this is Warren Guthrie and the news. And one night I forgot my name. I started to say, this is Warren Guthrie. I couldn't think of what it was. And so I forgot my name. The globe kept spinning. I finally got on. Got that old suit I've still got, I think. A Harris tweed, no less.
Today, following his retirement as Case Western Reserve professor and Ohio Public Relations Director, Warren continues to live in Cleveland. But he remembers a time long ago when he was tempted to move west.
When we were out in California, at the time of the convention that nominated a candidate, CBS wanted me to interview for a local show out there, which is a bigger paying market, a bigger market, and they insisted I use script. I said, nuts to you, I can't do it. So I didn't get the job.
As Warren Guthrie's collection of airline liquor bottles would suggest, he spent quite a bit of his news career in the air. His years as the Ohio reporter took him and TV8 photographers around the world. There were times, of course, when those photographers wished they were back in Cleveland. But even in Cuba, Warren had the situation under control. Warren built his reputation around being there first, and he often reported human interest items that the networks overlooked. At a crucial summit meeting in Paris, France, he wanted to know what kind of cars the dignitaries would drive, and where they would discuss matters of importance that would never be heard on television. Yes, even in the 1950s, many significant decisions were made in the men's room. All of us Clevelanders look forward to Warren Guthrie's overseas trips. We knew that Warren would take us to places we might never see. To meet people we had only read about or seen in photographs. And most importantly, we knew that when Warren returned, we would hear the story in his words, not someone else's.
I felt I had to put my integrity into a show. if somebody else wrote the script and I read it, that's not me. Most people don't believe I was really a newsman.